Behind me here is the Marmot Earlylight 2P. This is a 3-season backpacking style tent, weighs in at 5.5 pounds, which is definitely a manageable weight, especially if you've got 2 hikers who are going to be splitting that load. Would be a very roomy shelter for 1 person. It does have 2 doors and 2 vestibules, so you've got ample storage space outside the tent. It does come with a full coverage rain fly, so it's weatherproof. Let's take a step inside and look at some of the features. Couple of things to note about the fly design here. You'll notice that the zipper in the fly that allows you access to the tent inside is kind of offset, matches up very well with that D-shaped door. And what it does is it also allows you to have a bit of extra space here in the vestibule. So there's plenty of room here to stick a pack and boots and still have room to climb in and out of the tent. Marmot also has a very nice vent design built into the top of the door here. There's one on each side over each door. You can see it's a really long opening that runs pretty much the whole side of the tent. You can reach up in here and that's open into the tent, so you're going to get great flow, great airflow, good at reducing condensation buildup, and this huge coverage. So even in the middle of a torrential downpour, you can pop this vent open and get some sort of airflow. Popping it open is really simple. You've got a stiffened pole piece that's contained here. It lays flat when it's being packed up. The vent can be closed down completely with those Velcro tabs there, so it's sealed nice and flat. You can open it up and connect that top of that stiffened piece to a piece of Velcro at the top, and it really just opens that whole vent up and gives you some wonderful airflow and ventilation in the Earlylight. Marmot does include 2 window welds. You've got one on each end of the tent here, so it matches up with some of the mesh on the tent body itself, so you get some good light coming through the tent. If you want a chance to look outside and check the weather, you can do that. You'll also find a lot of locations on this tent to attach guylines to. We have 2 here, 1, 2, a 3rd down here. You'll find the same setup on the other end. These are great because if you get caught in bad weather or a high wind situation, you can use these points to anchor this tent to the ground a little bit better and support the pole structure as well. Marmot does not include stakes and guylines to anchor all these points. It's something you would need to buy separately. You can kind of do your own setup. But in particular, this one on the bottom is kind of a nice option to stake out separately because it will increase airflow and ventilation underneath the tent, especially in damp and wet weather. So let's take a look at the way the fly connects to the tent body itself and the footprint setup here. You've got a variety of straps and buckles. These are color-coded, so you can see the fly has a red tab. It matches up with the red tab here on the corner of the tent body. You'll find that on 2 of the corners. The other 2 corners are just basic, this silvery gray color. So it's a quick, easy way to figure out which corner of the fly goes with which corner of the tent. So the fly itself is going to buckle into this system through a Fastex buckle here, which is attached to the tent body, so it's a really quick, easy design. And then the adjustability on that buckle allows you to pull tension on the fly and get a nice taut pitch out of it. And you can see we have both the tent body itself and the footprint staked out here through these loops. And we have the tent pole going down into the grommet on both the tent body, and the bottom one here is attached to the footprint, which is underneath the tent. You can set this up a multitude of ways when you're using the fly, the tent, and the footprint all at the same time. The reason you'll see that there is a separate buckle here on the tab that is attached to the footprint is because this tent system allows you to use what Marmot calls a bare bones setup. I mean, you can leave the tent body at home. You can use just the poles, the fly, and the footprint to create a quick tarp-style shelter. And in that instance, you would be anchoring the pole from the tent into directly into the fly because the tent body wouldn't be there. So that's what that extra buckle's for. If you're using all 3 together, then it's not necessary, and you can just kind of stake it out. And if you feel like tucking the pole through that extra grommet, you can do that as well for a nice secure fit. So the body on the Earlylight 2P is comprised of mesh and some nylon. And you can see there's a nice band of mesh here at the bottom of the tent. This is great for breathability and airflow throughout the whole body of the tent. So this is going to be definitely a good 3-season option. It might be a bit chilly if you try to take this tent out in the wintertime, but you'd have great breathability. It wouldn't have much of a buildup of condensation. You do get some good mesh paneling across the side, the main body of the tent, so it's nice privacy. And then of course the top is all mesh. So if you happen to be out on a night when it's nice, you want to peel the fly back, you have a great view of the stars, and again, increased breathability and good airflow. As I mentioned earlier, the Earlylight 2P has two large D-shaped doors. You can see I'm sitting in one here. It's most of the side wall of the tent here, so I can definitely sit up, move in and out of the tent. It's quite spacious, and there's some good room above my head in this tent as well. It is kind of narrow, and it's a very minimal backpacking style shelter. I mean, it's really designed for two people with standard 20-inch wide sleeping pads to be able to lay in here next to each other, and you will find a little bit of tapering towards the footbox end of the tent. So it's going to be a little narrower on this end than it is on the end where you'd have your heads. There is some really great storage options inside this tent, despite it being fairly on the small side. You have 6 interior pockets. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4 small triangular pockets on each corner of this tent. And then up here on the wider end, you do have 1 and 2 pockets on the sides here as well, which are a little bit deeper and more secure to allow you to stow some larger, heavier items. Marmot does include a gear loft with this tent. And you can see it clips in real easily at the top here, and it's a nice taut fit. So again, you have a 7th pocket essentially of storage items up above the head here, just large enough that you can throw a headlamp or an extra layer or something else in there. But the Earlylight does have some really good internal storage options. Pole structure on the Earlylight 2P is just 2 poles with a classic wedge design going in each corner, crossing at the top here. They are DAC feather light poles, so you're looking at some lightweight aluminum pole structure here. And Marmot clips the body of this tent to the pole through a double clip system. It's really easy to use, especially if you happen to have a glove or a mitt on, and it securely attaches to the pole as well. I also wanted to mention that the 2 poles do have a slight bend to them at the end. If you receive this tent and the poles are bent, it's not damaged. It should be this way. All of the edges that come down on the corners near the ground of the tent have this little bit of bent design to it to kind of help pop the tent itself up, give a little bit more interior space while not including extra poles that would add weight to the tent. This tent does have a seam sealed, a waterproof floor on it. Marmot's using a catenary cut here, so you'll see that the seam kind of has a bit of an arch to it between either end. That lifts it up off the ground a little bit. It is a sealed seam, so it is going to be waterproof, but just a little bit more reinforcement and durability there. This tent does come with a footprint, and I do want to point out that footprint is cut a good couple of inches smaller all the way around. It's a really snug fit with the tent, and the reason for that being shorter than the tent body itself is to prevent any sort of water getting trapped between the footprint and the tent itself, in which it would just pool underneath the tent. So you can expect to see the footprint be a very tight, taut fit that does not, is a little bit shorter than the actual footprint of the floor of the tent itself. So you can take a look there and see it underneath. It is included with the Earlylight 2P.